Gonna mess up tonight. Good morning. Oh, not morning. Good evening, guys. Good evening, everybody. How is everybody doing this evening? Good to see you all. This evening, we are going to be continuing with the reading of Dynah. I don't know how many of you have been following with the reading. I noticed that when I'm on the live doing the reading, I don't see y'all. But afterwards, when I go back and look, I see where quite a few of you coming to listen. Let me turn this music down a little bit. I see where several of you have come in to listen to the reading afterwards. And I don't mind, as long as you come and as long as you listen. that's fine. That's perfectly fine with me. So this evening, for the next hour or so, I am going to be continuing with the reading of the book, The Atonement Child. There is just so much to this book. It is quite fascinating to me because the book is not only talking about the plight of this young woman who, for those of you who are just coming in and may have not been following the story, this is the story of a young woman who unfortunately got violated and subsequently got pregnant, and this has sort of destroyed her entire life. She is a Christian girl. She was raised with all the Christian values, and she went to a Christian college, and this event that occurred has turned her life upside down. First, she was engaged to the most promising student who's going to be a pastor. She had to break that off. She was going to a Christian college, and they basically put her out of the college because, in Christian rules, you can't be pregnant and unwed, despite the fact that she was raped. They put her out. So she had to go back home to California to her parents, bearing the burden of being pregnant and unwed, the burden of being raped by someone whom she doesn't know. She didn't even see the face of the person who violated her. And then to have her plans for her life just completely shattered in an instance. She is having a very hard time. And then to be contemplating whether or not she should abort the pregnancy. That is weighing a heavy burden on her. Not just a social burden, but also a religious burden. Because you all know how religion, and particularly Christianity, views abortion. And so this poor young woman is basically going through hell. Now she's back home with her mom and her Marielle, this one is Marielle. How are you doing, Marielle? Good to see you. Welcome. Cad, how are you doing? Good to see you, my dear sister. Welcome. And so, guys, this poor young woman, Dynah, is basically going through hell. Now, her mother is insisting on her terminating the pregnancy. She is having great conflicts because her mom raised her in the church and with the Christian values that aborting the pregnancy is wrong. She has adopted that principle and she's holding dearly to it. So imagine the conflict she's having now, that her same mother who grew her with the principles, who instilled those principles in her, that this is wrong, so wrong that your God will punish you for it. And now the same mother is encouraging you to commit this act. The dilemma continues with poor Dynah. She's having a very hard time dealing with her current circumstance. And so we are going to continue the reading. Last time we read the book, Dynah was at the office, at the doctor's office. She had several questions for the director. Dynah is now far along. She's like 4 months. She's just about halfway through her pregnancy. That's a long time to wait. It's either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. And you make those decisions in the early hours. You don't wait until you start bonding and you start feeling the flutters and the kicks, and no. At that time it becomes harder, and Dynah is learning that lesson right now. But anyway, let us continue. Brenda took charge of them and led them down the corridor. She glanced back once and saw Elizabeth still standing in the doorway, watching. She could read her expression as clearly as if she had spoken. "Do you see, Brenda? That's how it's done. Don't botch it. Just press this button when you are ready." Hannah glanced at the young woman and nodded bleakly. "Thank you." She hoped Dynah would come around quickly so they could get it done and get out of this place. She felt oppressed and sick to her stomach. She prayed God would give her the strength to get through this. "Lord, for my daughter's sake, help me." She looked at Dynah, who was lowering herself into the straight back chair and staring down at her clasped hands. "So, do you feel better, having talked with Mrs. Chambers?" Dynah raised her head. "She didn't answer any of my questions, Mom." "Of course she did. What are they going to do to my body, Mother? Did she tell us?" "And she said everything would be fine." "How can she know? There's a risk with any medical procedure, no matter how simple." Her eyes welled and spilled over. "I'm scared, Mom. I'm scared. I'm so scared." She looked down again, closing her eyes against the pain she saw in her mother's expression. "I'll be with you, darling." "I know, Mom, but what, honey? What about the Lord?" "Oh, baby," Anna said, biting her lips to keep from crying. She moved her chair closer and embraced her daughter. She had prayed for this child, and God had given Dynah to her. She had given the child back when Dynah was a nursing infant, promising to raise her daughter up to love the Lord above all else. And doesn't she, Jesus? She loves you. She sang her own made-up hymns of praise to you when she was just 3 years old. I never had to remind her to say her prayers. She was eager to spend time with you, always thinking of others. Do you remember how she stood on the beach and raised her hands to you in front of hundreds of people without the least embarrassment? Why do you do this to her, Lord? Why have you shredded her life and deserted us? Now, for those of you who have been listening to my readings, Don't this sound like the children of Israel? Because y'all remember, I saw the children of Israel, that's how they cry to the Lord. If you remember in the Psalms, especially, how they cry to the Lord and try to tell the Lord all that they have done. Look what we have done, or we have praised you, we have served you, we have done this for you, and this and that and the other. And look how you have caused the enemy to come up and destroy us. Why? Why? Why have you caused the enemy to come up and destroy us when we have done so much for you? And this is the same thing Anna is doing with her daughter here. Anna stroked her weeping child. I won't forsake you, she said, grieving. Sure God had done so to both of them. I love you, Dynah. You are my life. I won't let anything happen to you. I'm not ready, Mom. Can you understand? I do. Had she been ready? Was anyone ever ready to abort her child? Choice. Everyone said it was a woman's choice. What choice had she had? What choice had Dynah? Honey, I understand. Believe me, I do. Dynah shook her head hopelessly. How can you? I want to leave, Mom. I just want to leave. Dynah, I'm not ready. Please. But if Dynah is not ready at 4.5 months, when is she going to be ready? Let us continue. Anna saw her fear and felt it as her own. Her feelings were so ambivalent. She was so torn. What was she supposed to do? Would Doug understand if Dynah didn't have the abortion? Would he support her in that decision? No, he wouldn't. He'd made his feelings clear enough. What was she going to do, though? Oh, God. Why do I have to be the one to sit in this room? Why do I have to be the one to press my daughter to this end? Because I did it. Doug's the one making the demands this time. Let him push, like Jerry pushed. They think it's so easy. So the husband, Anna's husband, who is Dynah's father, is adamant that he's not going to care for this child that was born out of this violation of his daughter, his precious little angel. And so with that, Hannah has to go along with it. But now it's Dynah's body. Dynah has to make the decision whether or not she wants to abort. Because if Dynah says, I don't want to, there's nothing anybody else can do because it's her body. Andrea is here. Winsome. Oh, what's up? How are you doing, my dear sisters? Good to see y'all. It's story time. Story time, Andrea. And a story it is. And you know what? I can only imagine other Christian women. This might be the story that's written in the book, but I'm sure that many young women have gone through this kind of dilemma before, with their religion conflicting with social necessity. Because at this point, if I was Dynah, I am asking no questions, because I would never be 4 months along. But poor Dynah, her Christian beliefs are now conflicting with the social necessity that is at play right now. And poor thing. It's a yes, God says it's a really tough place to be in. It is. They think it's so easy. Oh God, it's not. They say they understand. Oh God, I don't. I never did. I never will. Is there something wrong with me that I can't give my baby up? That I can't forget? And now I have to bring Dynah into this wretched circle. She's your child. Have you forgotten you gave her to me? Why have you abandoned us? Now this is Anna talking to the Lord. Now remember, Anna had an abortion when she was younger. And after she had that abortion, it had troubled her. And she had had several miscarriages afterwards. And she attributed those miscarriages to the abortion, that the abortion was responsible for these miscarriages. And so she went into the church and she prayed and she prayed and she begged God to bless her with even one child. And if he blessed her with a child, she was going to give the child back to him and the child would praise him and all these things. Well, she has been doing that so far, but that doesn't negate the fact that Dynah's predicament is one that is similar but different from Anna's, because Anna had consented to be with Jesse when she got pregnant. And that's the complete opposite of poor Dynah. Dynah was violated. Now, when Dynah asked if this is God's way of proving himself to her, that gave me chills. Jojo, how are you doing, Jojo? Good to see you. It gave me chills that Dynah would feel that way, to ask the question if this was God's way, some way of either punishing her or presenting himself to her. Why would he present himself to her in such a violent manner, in such a degrading manner? And that's the conflict that poor Dynah is dealing with. But let us continue. Mom, Dynah said, trembling, seeing how upset her mother was. She didn't want to make everything so difficult. Can't we go? I need a little more time, please. Anna could see Dynah's confusion, her fear, but she didn't want to have to go through this again. She had already paid the money. Why couldn't they just get it done now and go? Dynah, I don't know what I want, Mom. I just know I'm not ready to do this. Not today. Anna was torn. She would have to face Doug. She would have to take she would have to face the brunt of his anger. As though she were the rapist. As though she were the one who had gotten them all into this mess. How was she going to help her daughter without turning her own life into a living hell? Please, Mom. Covering her face, Dynah cried. All right, honey, we'll go. We'll talk about it some more and come back to face this misery all over again. Could they leave without being seen? What if that young nurse was standing outside the door? Did they have to explain? She rose slowly and took Dynah's hand. As they came out into the corridor, the young black nurse was waiting. She moved, obstructing their path down the corridor. Are you ready now? I'm afraid not, Hannah said, embarrassed. Oh, Brenda said, frowning slightly. What could she say now to allay the girl's anxiety? She could see she was intent on leaving despite her mother's support. Brenda couldn't think of anything to say to make her go through with it. Because of that, she knew she would be in trouble again. Elizabeth would cast blame. It wouldn't matter that she was the one who had spoken to them. Would you like to speak with Mrs. Chambers again? Well, No, Dinah said when her mother glanced at her. A door opened across the hall, startling them both. A doctor came out and put a medical chart in a rack to the right of the door. Hannah stared at him. Jim? Jim Wyatt? Jim turned at hearing his name and looked at the elegantly dressed woman before him. Heat poured into his face. It is you, she said, amazed and oddly relieved. He smiled bleakly. It's been a long time, Hannah. He looked at the young woman with her. This is my daughter, Dynah. Jim held out his hand to Dynah. She was pale. Her hand was icy, and she was pregnant. She looked close to tears and ready to flee. I knew your mother in college. She was my sister's roommate. Was this girl going to be his last abortion for the day? Worse, was Anna going to be standing in the room with her and watched him at work? Hannah watched his face. He looked embarrassed and uncomfortable. He was acutely aware of their surroundings and not exactly happy to see her. He saw the question in her eyes as she looked up at him. How had he come to work in a place like this? Jim felt ashamed, though he couldn't think of any reason why he should be. It appears you are leaving, he said, somewhat stiffly. Yes, he worked here, and they had come for these services, hadn't they? Oh, dear God. Poor Anna. Dinah's uncertain. It's a big decision. She has a lot of questions. Mom, let's go, please. Dinah took a step towards the exit. Anna looked at him, appeal in his eyes. Maybe you could help, Jim. Could we talk to you about all of this? Procedures, risks, everything. He stared at her, aware that she believed he would be honest and that he would help lay Dinah's fears to rest. Now, this is Jim Wyatt's job. Jim Wyatt is the doctor, and this is what he does for a living. What do you think he's going to say? When a doctor is going to perform a procedure on you and you are afraid, what does the doctor do? He doesn't tell you, okay, don't do the procedure, just go on your way. No, he sits with you, he holds your hand, he tells you everything is going to be okay. We have some of the best nurses here, the best recovery team. I mean, I went to Stanford, I went to Yale, he tells you all of his credentials and he tries to put your fears to rest so that he can perform that procedure, because to him is not only the money but also the learning. It's a learning experience for him. And if you don't consent to the doctor cutting you open and going inside of you and peeking around and searching around and removing stuff and taking stuff out and doing what he does, then there basically wouldn't, science and medicine would not be as advanced as it is today. So what do you think Jim is going to tell her? Oh no, it's no problem. Even though you are 4.5 months along, it's going to be snip, snip, snap, snap, and you'll be done. I'll give you some pain medicine so you won't feel a thing. I'll sedate you so you won't even remember the procedure. That's what he's going to say. Let's continue. He glanced at Brenda, but she merely looked down at the file in her hands, offering no help. He could understand her dilemma. Policy. He didn't agree with it either, but Elizabeth had a way of driving the point home. As though right on cue, Elizabeth came out of her office and stopped to look at them. Her eyes narrowed. Sometimes she acted almost territorial. Annoyed, Jim stared back at her. He was well aware of her views. Elizabeth was convinced women didn't need to know about the pain and possible risks. She said that sort of information only added needlessly to their trauma. He, he didn't happen to agree. He thought women had the right to know the truth, but then his feelings didn't matter. The Supreme Court upheld Elizabeth's viewpoint, not his. In most cases, no questions were asked, and he didn't have a problem. In a few cases, they were, and he offered vague reassurances. With some, he wanted to tell them all the details right down to what happened to the fetus. Why should he have to hear the burden of what they were doing? Why did he have to be the one to hold the result of their decision in his hands? Why did he have to stare the truth in the face every day he worked in this grim place? The girl he had just helped had been in there 6 months ago. When he recognized her, he had had to stuff his feelings down and stifle the angry words that threatened to pour out. He had had to remind himself it wasn't his right to judge her. She wasn't the first to come back for another abortion, and this wasn't the first time he had felt such anger growing inside of him. Like a corrosive agent, it ate away any compassion he felt. Why didn't these girls use the birth control he had given them? Why didn't they listen to Elizabeth's admonitions or pay attention to the sex education classes taught in every grade school through high school all across the country? Every year, the numbers increased. And he does have a point. An ounce of prevention is better than 10 pounds of cure. You're given birth control, you're given sex education, excuse me. You are given all the tools you need to prevent this kind of scenario, but you keep going out there acting reckless, getting pregnant, and then seeing an abortion as the answer. I find that to be quite repulsive, to be honest with you. In a case like Dynah's, all my sympathy goes to Dynah. She didn't ask for this. She didn't go out and act recklessly to get this, to have herself in this dilemma. But the others who willingly decide that they're going to not use birth control, then find themselves in this predicament only because they know that they can go and abort it. That, to me, is repulsive. But we will continue. Business was booming. What a way to make a living. He felt sick and hopeless in the face of it, and trapped by his own principles and reasons for being here. Anna's daughter looked up at him, and he thought of his sister, beautiful, frightened, desperately confused. Carolyn had been about this girl's age when she died. Why did Anna's daughter have to come here? Why couldn't she have gone to another clinic across the city, or across the bay, or even into another state? Why did it have to be him? Jim, Hannah said softly, as though sensing his turmoil, we need your help. And there it was. He looked at Anna and her daughter and knew he couldn't turn away from them. They wouldn't be here if they had any other choice. I'll meet you for coffee and we'll talk about it. Brenda glanced at him, surprised. He ignored her. He would answer their questions. He couldn't do it here in a professional capacity, but elsewhere, in a casual setting, he could talk freely. They didn't look comfortable in this antiseptic hallway. The sound of muffled crying coming from the room behind him, and Elizabeth Chambers looking at them as though they lacked the guts to do what they had to do. In another minute, she would intervene and apply just the right measure of pressure to break down their resistance. This Elizabeth is something else. I have 2 hours before I make my rounds at the hospital, he said briskly, and suggested a coffee with high-walled booths where they would have privacy. I can meet you there in 30 minutes, he said. Relieved. Relief swept Hannah's face. Thank you, Jim. Thank you so much. She put her arm around Dynah as they headed down the corridor. Now, Anna don't realize, not Anna, but Dynah. Dynah doesn't realize that the longer she waits, the harder it becomes. The decision is the decision. Either you make the decision now or you don't. But my thing is, if Dynah doesn't make the decision now, she's going to have to live with it for a longer time. But then again, either way, she's going to have to live with it for the rest of her life. For the rest of her life. She's going to have to live with the fact that she was violated. She's going to have to live with the fact that she got pregnant. And if she goes through with the abortion, she's going to have to live with that as well. So damn if you do, and damn if you don't. Poor Dynah. God says, but she hasn't had this done before, and she's young, so she doesn't know that. She wouldn't know that. Well, that is true. She wouldn't know that. But if you think about it, she cannot escape it. The act is already done. She has already been violated. She's already pregnant. She cannot escape from that. That trauma is going to live with her for the rest of her life. You can't just get up one day and forget that you were raped. No matter how you try. You can't just get up and forget it. You will remember it. It will scar you. It's a permanent scar. The fact that she's gotten pregnant by it, that too is another scar. Now, if she does the abortion, that's another scar. And if she carries the pregnancy to fruition, that's another scar. If she gives up the child for adoption, that's another scar. If she keeps the child, so what is she supposed to do? Damn if she do, damn if she don't. But let us continue. It's getting a little bit dark up in here. I don't know, this time of the day just gets dark so soon. Why is the AC blowing? The heat is supposed to be blowing. Why is the AC blowing? Well, on the people, I try to get a little light here. And I was just trying to get some light. Relief swept Anna's face. Thank you, Jim. Thank you so much. She put her arm around Dynah as they headed down the corridor. Jim walked with them, knowing if he didn't, they would have to contend with Elizabeth. As it was, she moved to the front counter where they would have to talk with her before leaving anyway. They want time to think it over, he told her as he reached the counter. Phyllis, return their money, please. Phyllis glanced at Elizabeth. Jim raised his brow in challenge. I've assured these ladies we aren't in the business of coercing women into having abortions. Of course not, Elizabeth said indignantly, eyes glittering. Do as he says, Phyllis. She watched the money returned. Hannah stuffed the uncounted bills into her purse and opened the door, ushering Dynah out. Angry, Elizabeth looked up at Jim. What did you say to them? Nothing. Nothing? They practically ran out of here. Ignoring her, he picked up another chart and headed down the corridor. Fuming, Elizabeth glared after him. Who did he think he was? God? He needed to be knocked off that high horse of his. He might be a doctor, but she ran this place. He answered to her. Phyllis gave me the envelope in his box. When it was in her hand, she turned. Jim, you forgot something. Turning, he looked at her. What? She walked towards him with measured steps, opening the envelope as she did so. Eyes glacial, she held out his check. This, she said. A muscle jerked in his cheek. Elizabeth smiled sardonically. Don't you want it? You earned it. He took it, folded it, then stuffed it into his pocket. Elizabeth gauged his expression. Back to business, doctor. Satisfied with the look on his face, she turned and walked away. Dinah sat in the booth, sipping 7-Up, feeling off balance and out of place. Her mother seemed to have forgotten the reason for this coffee clutch as she reminisced with Dr. James Wyatt. On the drive to the cafe, she had said that he was the brother of a dear friend of hers who had died, and that his presence had obliterated all her fears about Dinah's care. Jim Wyatt would never do anything to harm you or anyone, she had said. He couldn't. It isn't in his nature to do so, not if he's the man I remember him to be. As Dinah studied him surreptitiously, he seemed all her mother thought of him. It's been so many years, Jim, Hannah said. He smiled. A lot of water under the bridge, huh? Away from the clinic, he could breathe easier. How's Jerry? Dinah glanced at her mother curiously, a bit surprised to see a quick blush coloring her cheeks. I don't know, she answered. I haven't seen him in years. I married a man I met here in the city, Douglas Carey. Good Scott's name. He's a wonderful man. She looked pointedly at his wedding band. And you? Her name's Cynthia. 15 happy years. She helped put me through medical school. Do you live here in the city? No. Cynthia and I have a place in Mill Valley. We wanted the children to grow up as close to the country as they could. We're a few minutes from the beach. How many children do you have? 2. He looked at Dinah. Much younger than Dinah. We got a late start. Dinah is my only child, you know. Dinah smiled slightly when her mother reached out to touch her hand gently, pride shining in her eyes. We should get our families together, don't you think? Dinah shrank at the thought, even as her mother said it. Sounds good. We could have a picnic at the beach or somewhere in the Golden Gate Park. Jim glanced at Dinah and saw how rigidly she sat, shoulders hunched, eyes downcast, her thumb rubbing up and down on the frosty glass. Why don't we forego reunion plans until a later time? He said gently. Dinah watched her mother glance at him again, then reached out to put a comforting hand lightly on her wrist. I'm sorry, honey. It's just that seeing Jim after all these years was such a surprise, a pleasant one, she hastened to add. Look at Servant David in the place. Servant David, what's up? How are you doing, my brother? So good to see you. Happy today, what? Saturday? Happy Saturday to you, my dear. Let us continue. What sort of friends that her mother had? Dinah wondered. And who was Jerry? You can ask Jim anything, honey. He'll be honest with you. Jim hoped she wouldn't be too inquisitive. The last thing he wanted to do was discuss graphic details of what went on in the clinic. Dinah raised her eyes and looked between her mother and Jim Wyatt. How did one begin such a terrible conversation? Should she dance around the edges or cut straight to the heart of it? She wished her mother would start, but she just waited quietly. Watching Dinah with such an expression of sadness that Dinah wanted to cry. Her mother must have sensed her struggle because she patted her hand. It's all right, honey. It's going to be okay. Is it? Dinah asked softly. Despite her mother's assurances, she wasn't sure she could trust this man. Could she entrust her life to him? Lord, is he trustworthy? Her mother turned back to the doctor, who also waited in silence. She was raped, Jim. She has had an awful time since. Her engagement's been broken off. She's had to leave college. Her life is in complete turmoil. Her father feels, well, he feels abortion is the best answer. Oh, Jesus, Jim thought, bereft. He couldn't get that other girl out of his head. How far along is she? It happened in early January. Second trimester? The girl was too far along for a menstrual extraction or suction curettage. Too bad you didn't arrive at your decision sooner. Dinah's head came up. She hadn't said she had made a decision, but he went on. Didn't the examining doctor offer you a morning after pill? Yes, and I refused. He looked at the cross around her neck and decided not to pursue her reasons. Best not to get into religious territory. It only muddied the waters. Even a couple of months afterwards, it would have been a simple procedure. About 15 minutes, and that's it. Second trimester abortions are a little more difficult. He looked at Dynah, trying to think of gentle ways to say it. I'll give you an injection of prostaglandin to induce contractions and expel the tissue. He left it at that. If she needed to know the grim details of how the hormone was injected and where and what it did to the fetus, she would have to ask. Time enough to know when it was being done. The risk is minimal, Jim continued, seeing her pallor and wanting to reassure her. In the 5 years he had been performing abortions, he had kept to the first trimester abortions, leaving the late terms to Dr. Franklin. Since Dynah was the daughter of a good friend, he had made an exception this time. He'd see her through it and stand beside her in recovery to make sure she was fine. The newspaper article about the dead girl flashed into his mind. Why should he think of that now? Why couldn't he get it out of his head? And why was Anna looking at him like that? He focused his attention on Dynah. She was the one in need of help. I take care of you. I'll be as careful with you as if you were my own daughter. Even as he said it, his heart shuddered. What about later? Hannah said quietly. She'd remain in recovery for an hour or two. I'd keep a close watch on her. I mean, later. I've only had a few clients come back with complications, all of which were usually minor and easily resolved with drugs. His mouth curved grimly. Unfortunately, most who came back were pregnant again, usually within a few months. His expression softened as he looked at Dynah. I don't want you to worry about anything, Dynah. It's not as difficult as you have probably heard. Again, he saw Anna glance at him as though she wanted to say something. But she stayed silent, a troubled expression on her face. Dynah knew her mother had already made up her mind. She wanted to ask questions and now felt constrained about doing so. Her mother was tense and nearly in tears, and prolonging the conversation would make it harder for her. Yet, Dynah found herself floundering. What she knew in her head and heart warred with what this man was saying. Her mother spoke up, as though wanting to avoid talking about any more details. How did you become involved in all of this, Jim? Carolyn, Jim said. Carolyn? Dinah's mother said, clearly surprised at Dinah's questioning glance. Her mother explained. Carolyn was Jim's sister. She was one of my best friends in the sorority. She smiled. We were both freshmen, so we learned the ropes. Together. Carolyn was beautiful, wild about Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix, and enjoying her first taste of real freedom. Knowing her was like watching a fireworks display, glorious and beautiful while it lasted. While it lasted? Her mother nodded at the question. She died. Over spring break, everyone was stunned. It was devastating to lose her. She looked at Dr. Wyatt with a slight frown. But I don't understand. You told me she died of a ruptured appendix. She died of sepsis, following an illegal abortion. AG is here. AG, what's up? Servant David says, I'm okay. Today is Thursday. Oh, yeah, today is Thursday. Yeah. Well, on then, so I work night shift, I confused, you know. Oh, shucks. Yeah, today is Thursday. Today is Thursday for real. Tomorrow is Friday. AG, what's up? How are you doing, my love? I know you're out there on them streets. Now be safe, okay? Let us continue. Oh, Jim! Dinah heard the tears in her mother's voice. Some woman did it. How Caroline found out about her, I never knew. My parents had no idea. Mom said Caroline went shopping one afternoon and came home pale and weak. She went to bed. She kept saying she'd be fine, but she kept getting worse. By the time they took her to the emergency room, it was too late. You're not Carolina? Really? You're not Carolina? So you know, check me. Her eyes filled, remembering her younger sister. Remembering. Let's do that again. His eyes filled, remembering his younger sister. She had everything going for her. It's remembering how Caroline died that keeps me going. Anna sat silent. Jim looked at Dinah. Things are different now. It's legal. You can have the best medical care. It's a simple procedure, done by a doctor in a sterile environment with the proper equipment. There's little risk. Within a few days, you'll be just fine. Dinah felt his determination, but as casual and easy as Dr. Wyatt made it sound, she couldn't think about it without a visceral response. She couldn't think it through without horror. Suddenly, she felt a fluttering sensation in her abdomen, and she froze. She waited and felt it again, a stirring of life. Her heart raced madly. Are you all right, dear? Her mother said, touching her again. Dinah wanted to scream. No! I can feel the baby moving. Oh, God. How can I be all right under these circumstances? Can I concentrate on the rape that produced this child and go through with an abortion? And if I do, can I walk away unscathed? Dinah? She looked at her mother and saw the hope that lay there. Her mother wanted it over and done with. She didn't want to have to deal with the problem. She didn't want to have to battle with Daddy over the moral implications or alternatives. In their minds, there was no alternative. Dinah envisioned herself in a narrow chute, like some poor cow being herded along. Hold on, let me have to. Oh Lord Jesus. Okay, guys. I have to finish do this. I have to finish this. And then go make a couple phone calls before me eat out. Alright. Then we will deal with that then. Then I'll deal with that issue. Alright, let us continue. We just get a little bit of discombobulation right there, so. But may I gather myself together? I will continue the reading. AG say trouble me I look. I mean I like look for me no look. Me no usually look for trouble, you know. Me no like trouble. Me like peace and calm. Me no like trouble. See my face there? It's not a troubled face. I don't like trouble. But let us continue, guys. Let us continue. Where was I? Me I lose where me was. Dynah envisioned herself in a narrow chute, like some poor cow being herded along. Everyone she loved standing around and above her with electric prods, stinging her and moving her in one direction, towards death. Not hers, but death nonetheless. She felt movement again, and she could imagine small arms and legs flailing. How much worse would it be when this man injected the deadly hormone? Would she feel the child's death throes? God, how can I live with that? God, Jesus, where are you when I need you? Will you please excuse me, she said, shaking. I need to go to the ladies' room. Any excuse would do. She had to get out of the booth and away. Are you all right, honey? You don't look well. I'm a little nauseated. I'll be fine, Mom. I just need to use the bathroom. It was all she could do to wait until her mother slipped from the booth and helped her out. Anna watched her daughter for a moment as she hurried away before sitting down again. She frowned. She's not sure, she said, almost apologetically. I've always thought her it was wrong, and now this happens. I keep telling her it's not her fault. If anyone has a good reason for having an abortion, she does. It would be so much easier on everyone if she'd just get it done. Then they could put it all behind them. It's not something to rush into, Jim said. Anna thought it ironic that he would be the one to say that. She's a beautiful girl, Hannah. Yes, she is, isn't she? And she's good. She's been such a joy, never a worry. She shook her head, pressing her lips together, fighting tears. Life wasn't fair. Sorry I mentioned Jerry. I thought it was a sure thing. So did I. She gave a bleak laugh and lowered her head, her hands around her coffee mug. She was so focused, but yet so confused, the old pain churning again, memories drowning her in misery. When Jim had told Dynah that she wouldn't suffer any long-term after effects, she had wanted to believe him. Maybe she was one of the rare cases who had had problems for years afterwards. She had wanted to say something, to ask questions, but she couldn't. Not with Dynah sitting beside her. What would her daughter think of her if she knew she had had an abortion? Would Dynah lose all respect for her? Of course she would. She simply wouldn't understand. How could she? She thought again of Jim's sister, Carolyn. Her death had made Anna realize of her own mortality. She and two other girls had driven to Pasadena for the funeral. It was after that trip that she had given in to Jerry's wishes. They had been in his apartment, the news at Vietnam, blaring reports about the offensive in Hue. when she had given herself to him. The world was winding down, blowing up around them. She had wanted to grasp every second of happiness she could. And everything had turned to ashes anyway. Actually, I could have ended up like Carolyn, she said. Before thinking better of it, she hesitated and then went on. Seeing no reason to hide anything anymore, not from Jim after all, she raised her head to see how he took the revelation. Nothing in his expression said he condemned or judged her. Why not tell him? If anyone could understand, surely Jim would. Douglas never really had. He refused to talk about it, and she couldn't get past it. Well, one thing I gotta say is, Hannah had no business telling her husband Douglas that she had had an abortion before she had met him. She caused herself that pain and that problem by divulging that information to Douglas. That wasn't Douglas' business. Doug, let me tell you something. It's not everything you must tell the person you with. Because trust me, you see when that person they become your ex, that person gone with all of your business. And one thing I have learned is that them love lay down pan pillar and tell the next woman what them do with your business. So, with Anna having told her husband Doug that she had had an abortion before she met him, he constantly brings it up. Why? I don't know. I don't know why he does that. But he brings it up. Sometimes quite subtly, but he does. And that keeps it in her memory that she had an abortion. And I don't know if I could ever be with somebody who go and bring that up every minute. Why are you going to bring that up for? Why are you going to bring it up for? But let us continue. I heard about that woman in Los Angeles, she said softly. One of the girls in the sorority house gave me her name. I was going to go to her, but Jerry found a doctor just outside Reno. I guess I should be thankful. Jim didn't say anything. He just reached over and took her hand. It was enough. AG say, if you can't tell me in business, one thing for sure, it will be safe. I won't tell nobody. Let's continue. Jim didn't say anything. He just reached over and took her hand. It was enough. One of my friends drove me to the doctor's house. As soon as she left, he drove me out into the desert. I thought he was going to do it there at his house, but he said no. The Catholic Church had people watching him, and he said he needed to be careful. I don't remember how long he drove. An hour, maybe more. It seemed like forever. We were way out in the desert. I didn't have any idea where I was, but I didn't care. I just wanted it over. She looked down, not saying anything for a moment, pressing the pain down so she could tell him the rest. There was a garbage dump with a high fence. He had a trailer parked there, all set up like a hospital examining room. The table with stirrups, instruments, everything. It was clean. He squeezed her hand. You were lucky. He raised her head. She raised her head. Was I? Jim looked into her tear-washed eyes and saw her anguish. For a moment, it was as though he shared a measure of the bitter brew and felt poisoned. She smiled sadly. Everything was done properly. The right equipment, a sterile environment, just like you were saying to Dynah. But it wasn't all right, Jim. It wasn't. What do you mean? I couldn't have children. When Doug and I got married, I wanted a baby more than anything. Maybe to atone for what I had done, or just because it was always a part of what I wanted. Every time I got pregnant, I miscarried. My gynecologist said it was because of the abortion. Dinah was a miracle. Tears slipped down her cheeks. You told my daughter, you told my daughter everything would be fine in a few days. Maybe, God willing, that's the way it will be. But you know what, Jim? There's more to it than the physical part. It's been 29 years and I'm still not over it. Jim felt his chest tighten. He couldn't speak. He looked into Anna's eyes and knew he had seen that same despair in countless other women. She drew back slightly, withdrawing her hand from his and digging in her purse for a Kleenex. Sorry, she muttered. He started to say something, but just then the waitress approached. The young lady asked me to give you this. She handed the note to Hannah and left. Hannah opened it quickly and read. She sighed heavily. Dinah went home by taxi. She says she's fine and not to worry. Folding it, she held it tightly in her hand. She's always concerned about everyone else. Even now, she shook her head, struggling to contain her emotions. She looked up at him, eyes fierce. I don't want my daughter to go through what I did, Jim. I swear she won't. How can you swear that? I'm a doctor. I know what I'm doing. You are going to have to trust me. What else could she do? I'd sooner trust you than anyone else. I guess. I know how much you care. I remember how you used to spend your weekends volunteering at the local hospital. I swore I'd never let another girl end up like Carolyn if it was within my power to help. Since that 1973 decision, helping had been made easy. She studied him, sensing something behind the vehemence, and it occurred to her what it might be. Did you know Carolyn was pregnant? He pushed his coffee cup away. Yes. She asked for your help, didn't she? He looked at her, guilt-ridden, unable to answer. Carolyn had come to him, desperate and pleading. He worked in a hospital. He had access to tools and drugs. He knew he knew anatomy. He was her brother. He had to help her. And still, he had refused. They had argued. She had accused him of being judgmental and self-righteous. He had told her she was selfish and hedonistic. She should have thought of the consequences before she started screwing around. He was tired of being big brother and fishing her out of the soup she made. He wasn't going to jeopardize his future by performing an illegal abortion or helping convince some doctor it was psychologically necessary. It was time she grew up. Instead, Carolyn died. A part of him had gone down into the grave with his sister. What was left had been trying to purge the guilt ever since. When abortion became legal, he lost all his excuses for not getting involved, not helping others like Carolyn. He discussed it with Cynthia, half hoping she would support him in anything he decided. She understood his feelings. She applauded his compassion. And the money was good. It seemed a God-sent gift to get them out from under the huge debts he had accumulated from medical school and internship and residency. They could have a nice home where the children could grow up in relative safety. Oh God. Is any place safe anymore? Anna saw the torment written on his face and was sorry she had opened old wounds. I'm sorry, Jim. I'm so very sorry. Kat said, so why in the world would she want her daughter to go through that if after 29 years she is still not over it? Well, everybody deal with trauma differently. And because hers was voluntarily, she had made that decision to be with Jerry, and subsequently she got pregnant. On the other hand, poor Dynah. Dynah had not made that decision to be with this person who violated her. And so, in Anna's eyes, Dynah's situation is so different that she thinks Dynah will be able to overcome the circumstances better than she was able to overcome hers. Let's continue. When abortion became illegal, he lost all his excuses for not getting involved, not helping others like Carolyn. He discussed it with Cynthia, half hoping she would support him in anything he decided. She understood his feelings. She applauded his compassion. And the money was good. It seemed a God-sent gift to get them out from under the huge debts he had accumulated from medical school and internship and residency. They could have a nice home where the children could grow up in safety. Oh God, is any place safe anymore? Anna saw the torment written on his face and was sorry she had opened old wounds. I'm sorry, Jim. I'm so very sorry. It was a long time ago, he said, wishing the pain weren't so fresh. Let's get back to Dynah. You know, she might feel easier about the procedure if I performed it in a hospital setting. What do you think? Possibly. General, for example, they have all the necessary equipment. They handle abortions all the time. A hospital will be more expensive, though. Don't worry about it. I'll write it up so insurance handles the cost. The mailman hailed Dynah as she was walking up the front steps. She turned and smiled in greeting, accepting the bundle of mail he gave her. He tipped his cap and wished her a nice day before heading down the hallway, the walkway again. Slipping the rubber band off, she flipped through the envelopes, half hoping Ethan had written her. She found a letter addressed to her with no return address. It wasn't from Ethan. Unlocking the door, she put the mail on the table in the entry hall and tore open the envelope. It was a brief note from Joe. He wanted to know how she was doing. Did she know she could call him anytime? He cared about her. He was making plans to come west right after graduation and hoped she wouldn't mind him looking her up. Hang around June 15. I'll be on your doorstep. He was praying for her. She tucked the note back into its envelope. Joe hadn't mentioned Ethan. She couldn't help wondering at the oversight. But then, Ethan and Joe were best friends. She wondered if Ethan was picking up his life and dating again. Girls were always around him. Guys, me no know, but after the experiences that I've had in the most recent years of my life, I always seems to be like not looking for the worst, but because I've become so distrusting, I find myself sometimes looking beyond the spoken words and believing the unspoken rather than the spoken. By that I mean, in reading this book, why do I feel like Joe was the rapist? Why do I feel that way, guys? I don't know. I don't know. I just feel. Liz, what's up, my love? How are you doing, my darling sister? I don't know why I feel that way. But anyway, we're going to continue. We are going to continue. She wondered if Ethan was picking up his life and dating again. Girls were always around him. easy pickings, lots of picture-perfect virgin girls looking for a good, godly husband. It hurt too much to think of all the possibilities. Someday he would marry someone pretty, unsoiled, and supportive, someone he could mold into the wife he wanted. And what about me, Lord? What kind of future am I going to have? Dynah? Startled, she glanced up. Grandma! Smiling through her tears, she went into her grandmother's arms. She had noticed a car out front when the taxi pulled up, but hadn't bothered to give it more than a cursory glance. Had she done so, she would have noticed the Oregon license plate and known that it was her grandmother. I got here about an hour ago. Good thing your mother gave me a key last year, or I would have had to hunt up a restroom at the gas station. I didn't know you were coming, Grandma. Of course I'd come. The minute I heard you were home, and why, nothing could keep me away. Dynah withdrew and looked at her, heat flooding her cheeks. Mom called you? Actually, I called her. I knew something was wrong and pressed her. Evie touched her granddaughter's cheek, seeing more than the child wanted to reveal. It will be all right. That's why I came. Grandma came to save the day. Dynah could feel trouble coming from all directions. She smiled wanly. She shouldn't have told you. Why not? Family should hold together at all times. She put her arm around Dinah's waist. Let's talk in the family room. I just started a pot of coffee. Have you eaten? I'm not very hungry. I can mix up some tuna for a sandwich. You have always liked my tuna. Or is your stomach queasy? Just a little. Your mom always keeps chicken soup on hand. I'll fix some for you instead. Why don't you sit at the breakfast table and we'll talk while I get things together? Where's your mom, by the way? We ran into an old friend of hers. They're having coffee together. They were probably talking about what they were going to do about her problems. She sat down and stared at the envelope between her hands. She should write a note back to Joe and tell him that everything was fine and he need not worry. If she called and told him so, he'd know she was lying. She didn't want word getting back to Ethan that her life was in ashes. Is the letter from Ethan? Her grandmother asked. No, her throat tightened. Just a friend. She forced a smile, trying to achieve an atmosphere of normalcy. So how's everything going in Oregon, Grandma? Are you and Gladys still chumming around together? Evie closed the pantry door, a can of Campbell's soup in her hand. We keep tabs on each other, all right. As a matter of fact, I called her just before you got home. She was already thinking I died in a rest stop or been hijacked somewhere. She can be an old worrywart at times. She opened a cabinet and then another until she found the mugs and silverware. Your mom's been reorganizing again. She takes after you. Dynah listened to the whir of the electric can opener. Are you still involved in your church? President of the women's club, she said, pouring the chicken soup into a bowl and adding tap water. It's the last time I'm going to do it. She stirred the soup, put the bowl into the microwave, and tapped in 3 minutes. That's what you said a few years back. I mean, it was time. They need new blood. I've run out of juice and time. Dynah looked at her, studying her intently. Grandma was like a sprite, always moving, always finding something to do, a bundle of energy, obsessively organized. Dynah adored her. She watched now as her grandmother drummed her fingers on the counter, waiting for the microwave to shut off. She looked older, a little thinner, more gray in her hair. Are you feeling all right, Grandma? Evie cast her a quick glance, surprised by the question. She had forgotten how intuitive Dynah was. She noticed people cared about them. I'm fine, she said. Ping went the microwave. She opened it and took out the steaming mug of soup. If you discount the arthritis, rheumatism, constipation, fading eyesight, and ingrown toenails, I'm in the pink of health. Dynah laughed. Evie set the mug down in front of Dynah and took a seat. Drink your soup. She patted her hand. You have to take care of yourself, Dynah. You have someone else to think about. Here ends the reading. Here ends the reading of, as much as we are going to read today, of the Atonement Child. When we come back tomorrow, hopefully, we will continue with the reading of the Atonement Child. Now, this book here, I don't know why I chose this book, but I guess I will never know. This book has a lot of scenarios that opens for a lot of discussions. Do you all think if Dynah was not religious, the decision to do the abortion would be so hard to make? Think about it. Think about it. And when we come back tomorrow, we will talk about it. Do you think if Dynah was not religious, do you think the decision to abort would be so hard to arrive at for her? We will talk about it tomorrow. All right. So once again, I want to say thanks to everybody who came into the live. AG and Joe and Liz, Winsome, Andrea, Cad, and a whole lot more people who came in, looked in, and went on their way. I want to say thanks to you all for coming in. And if you came in and you didn't hit the like button on your way in, don't forget to hit it on your way out. I appreciate those of you who have shared out the lives. And to all the newbies, we are on our way, guys. I think we are like at 7,800. I think we are. So I'm going to project and say, for the new year, for our new year get together, for our new year party, we're going to be celebrating 10K. It's not far-fetched, and I refuse to think small. So I'm going to give it a month. I'm going to give it, because tomorrow is the 1st. Yeah, so I'm going to give it a month. Say that. And the New Year's Eve celebration, we're going to celebrate 10K. All right, guys. Yes, and y'all going to be there with me because you have been there with me since when I first opened up my channel in 2019, you know. Yeah, I think it was the end of 2019 because I went on Unstoppable in October of 2019. I'm going to open up the channel shortly thereafter. I think I had like 30 people at the time. Yeah, I think I had like 30 people at the time. And now 2021, 2023, 4 years later, yeah, we have increased. We are going to be grateful, and we're going to say thanks. Thanks to everybody who came in. Thanks to everybody who subscribed. Thanks to everybody who has watched my videos. Thanks to everybody. Even though YouTube demonetize us, nothing can stop us. Me not make because of YouTube, me lose my testimony. Me not pay YouTube no mind. All right. We're not do it for the money. Okay. So, but the money kind of nice. But but no matter what happened, we keep our spirits up and keep going, regardless of whether or not YouTube take our monetization. We still going. All right. So thanks, guys. Our Joseph say, where are you, Trevor? Are you in your bed? Yes, in my bed, me there. May I get up now, go get ready for where people them work. Yeah. Yeah, yes, I just wanted to sit here. I was already sitting here. So I just say, let me just sit here and just do the live. I didn't bother to get up. So I just doing it right here. But you see what I mean, Liz? You see what I mean, sis? Yeah. So I want to say thanks to you all. Thanks to you all for your love and for your support. I sincerely appreciate you all. All right. I'm going to run off now and go to work. And hopefully tomorrow morning, I hope I'm not too tired tomorrow morning, we will continue to read some more. We are going to be reading the Jeremiah book, because Jeremiah, if nobody else in the Bible not fascinate me, Jeremiah has fascinated me. And so I have gone to look over some of the things that Jeremiah has said, and I'm trying to make notes of it and going back in the Bible and searching for stuff to verify, because there's a lot of confusing stuff, especially when it comes to Jeremiah and Zedekiah. It's a little bit confusing. One part says it's just a lot of confusion. The stories are not there's a lack of consistent cohesion in the stories, and so you have to be flipping back and forth to see what this person said and what the other person said about the same circumstance, and so it sort of adds for some confusion. But anyway, we're still reading, and if we find ourselves confused and we have to wheel and come again, we wheel and come again. It's as simple as that. Because I tell you, sis, a piece of a confusion. But if we have to wheel and come again, we wheel and come again. And we're going to wheel and come again as many times as we have to, so that we can get our understanding from it. Because I know the people them hope that we will not do any wheeling and coming again. We will just read one part and just say this is it and keep moving. But that's not me function. Because if me not find the answer, me tormented until me find the answer. You understand? And if it's not the answer, at least it is something that is comparable to an understanding. And that is what I need to find, an understanding of Jeremiah's behavior. But anywho, that is going to be it from me for right now. Somebody there call me. Unwatch yourself. Somebody call me. It's a potential fraud. This number has been reported as fraud. You see, that's why I love that phone here now. So that phone just tell me, anybody who call me, the phone tell me. And only this phone may have to do that. Anybody who call me, it already determine who the number is for. It tell me, even if the number is saved in my phone, it tell me that this is Liz, but she's not saved in your contacts. Yeah. But anyway, that is going to be it from me for now, my friends. Until next time, this is Trev from Trevessence, where your journey matters. We will talk. No, so I not answer to them, Liz. I not answer. That's why I love my phone. Because my phone tell me who it is and stuff. If the number is not saved in my phone and it come up and it says the number is verified, you just say this number is verified as Joe, but it's not in your contacts, then we will answer, because at least it's a verified number. So it might be somebody on the other line who genuinely wants to talk to me. Yeah. But then I said it said this number has been reported as fraud. So why would I answer it? Yeah, but anyway, that's going to be it from me for right now, my friends. We will talk again in the morning. So have yourselves a great night, everybody.